suggestion watching. I think it's going to be
Granholm's in the administration.
okay, Whitmer, I'm sorry. She would.
He's obviously in there.
Here's the thing. Because the most, every election has some well, maybe better yet, they
Picked out, he was, I can't stand the guy. Dude, you did really well. Yeah, because he's a brilliant. You have all these people watching, and you have that whole diverse far-right conspiracy theories. And they're going to take a 10-second clip.
The name and the overlay, you know.
Of course. My son is obviously small schools Trinity University. But it's come out with a kind of degree is exciting.
No, I think I'm speaking, Steve. Come on. I'm real, I promise.
Some of the realest people out there, right? When it comes to Twitter,
Good evening, everybody. So this is sort of the first call to grab your last drink and grab a seat, and we'll get the ceremony, the meeting started here in just a couple of minutes. So everybody sort of, again, grab a drink and grab a seat. Awfully quiet. So again, grab a drink, and we're going to start the agenda here in just a couple of minutes. Grab a seat. It's open seating. Feel free to sit wherever you want to.
Yeah.
Such a commanding voice.
Your hands are freezing. Oh, okay, okay. So nice. Is this very interesting?
You don't remember.
I've seen you on Twitter. Yes, or X, sorry, and I think your wife actually followed me, so your wife is the first. I didn't want to see you straight. Tell me,
may need another cocktail. Can we take two So at the end of that, yeah, I was.
So as you all find your seats, let's talk a little logistics here. We have about 55 seats with, that are going to get served. We might have more than 55 people. We had a big surge of folks who signed up in the last day or two. So if you grab a seat, I eat a late lunch, so if you wouldn't mind, if we have 56, somebody can have my dinner. I just want to make sure that we don't leave somebody out. So grab a seat, make sure we have a spot for everybody. Okay, I think everybody's got a seat. So welcome. It is a real delight to be here with you. This is Principals First Nashville meeting. So someday I think it's gonna be like Woodstock. Everybody's gonna claim they were there. There are gonna be thousands of people 20 years from now that said they were in this room with us. So look around, take pictures, make sure we keep track. So we have a great lineup of speakers tonight, and then there's me. And so I'm the Admiral James Stockdale of this, so who am I and what am I doing here? So who am I? My name's Steve Dickerson. I was a former state senator. I represented this area of Nashville as Republican for 2 terms. In 2020, my constituents thought I should practice medicine full time. And ever since then, I've been an anesthesiologist back full time. I'm here because I emailed Heath Mayo about 3 months ago. I was intrigued by what he was saying on X. And I said, hey, are you interested in getting something going in Tennessee? He said, yes, July 2nd, and you're the chairman. So that taught me a lesson. No good deed goes unpunished. So to hit the Stockdale again, what am I doing here? I think the same thing that we're all doing here. And that is, those of us who've been lifelong Republicans have noticed over the last several years that sort of the philosophic core of our party has shifted somewhat. I've been called a lot of things. I ran for office in 8 separate elections. I assure you I've been called every name in the book. Rhino, urban elitist, those are the nice things. Country Club Republican, I consider myself a centrist conservative. And the reason why I'm here tonight is that I think the voice of the centrist conservative is being drowned out, and I'd like to give it a chance to flourish in the Republican Party. So the Attorney General, Heath, Nancy are going to speak after me. I'll be brief. They, I think, understand the subject matter, the laws, the Supreme Court infinitely better than I do. What I understand is Tennessee politics, and so I would consider this a call to action. I've got 3 or 4 suggestions about how we can get off Twitter, because nobody really cares what you tweet. Get off Facebook, you're irritating your neighbors and your friends, and actually try to get our philosophy out there and get it heard by Republican elected officials. So number 1, it's easy, recruit some friends. Everybody here has friends who probably are equally dismayed or frustrated as we are. Get 5 people, and let's get active. Number 2, depends on which county. I know we have friends here from Murray County, Williamson County, Davidson County. I think the council races in Sumner County and Williamson County and Murray County are key. I think running for school board in those counties is essential to help sort of get our philosophy out there. We're not trying to control schools. We're not trying to ban books either. And I think a lot of people in this room could be really well served by running, or if you don't want to run, support those candidates. Number 2, get involved with your county party. I think if we got everybody here who's in Davidson County, and you brought 2 friends with you, we could go to the Davidson County Republican Party and have have a big impact rather, on what they do and the stuff that they say. Frankly, the folks like us, I just don't think we're present in the county parties in Tennessee at this point. Let's get active. Yeah, we're scared to be. I mean, trust me, as I said, I've been called a lot of names, got a lot of threatening emails. In 2016, I said I would not vote for Donald Trump. I was on the ballot with him. You should have seen the vitriol that I got. They tried to throw me out of the Republican Party at that point. As Ronald Reagan said, as you may know, he was a lifelong Democrat. He was a union representative for the Actors Guild. And he said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. So, with this call to action, I think we can get our voices heard, get the centrist conservative voice out there, and have an influence on who gets elected. Final point is, we've got a number of key state house and state senate races that are going to start to be contested with early voting in less than 2 weeks. Principles first is very clear. We're not endorsing, we're not getting involved in these races. I'm speaking to you as an individual here. If you would like to donate or contribute in any way, whether it's knocking on doors or making phone calls, there are a couple of candidates that I think you should get behind. I will not mention them here tonight because if I did, I think their opponents would use it against them. But Heath can get you my contact information. If anybody would like to get involved with a little money or a little effort on behalf of these candidates, I'd be glad to share that with you privately. So enough about me. You're here to hear the other folks here. I think Heath Mayo is going to come up now. So thank you all for being here. And without further ado, Heath Mayo.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first Principals First dinner here in Nashville. Thank you, Steve. And I do want to thank our growing leadership team here in Tennessee who helped kind of bring this together. It isn't easy to host something like this. Steve Dickerson is one of them. Guy Camilleri is here. Ed Moore, who's down in Columbia, is up in Columbia. He's here. Ed, there you are. And got some other Principals First. There's long-timers in the room. Lee Annis, who's down from Maryland. Just a great team that really, a few people with courage and energy can really make a big difference. And I think that is the story of Principals First. The group was founded in 2019. I see a lot of new faces, so I'll just give you a brief backstory about the organization. This is a completely grassroots volunteer organization. I practice corporate law in New York. I don't do politics for a living. Everything you see is basically just volunteer folks who have kind of had enough and are wanting to make a difference. And it's one of the most inspiring things that I've been a part of. I don't really know why people keep coming, but they do, and we host a summit every year in DC in February, and it continues to grow. And it's the same weekend as CPAC. We juxtapose ourselves against CPAC purposefully because we don't think there's much serious discussion going on about the principles of our country or the ideas that can really make change in Washington, and we found that to be a good juxtaposition that kind of really shows what we're all about. It's every year it gets a little bit bigger and a little bit better, and some of the speakers here tonight were there at the summit this year, and so if you haven't been to the Principals First Summit, I encourage you to join us. This coming year we'll be back in DC, I think February 23rd through the 25th. So join us if you haven't. It's just a great time to meet folks from Tennessee, but also folks like us from all around the country. I got over here. We had one in Charleston. What was it? Saturday evening. Great group, about the same size as this, honestly, and just a fabulous dinner. Drove over, got here Sunday. I'm staying over by the airport, and I went to Hermitage. I'd never been there. I went there on Monday, and I didn't go in the mansion, but I walked around the grounds. Just fabulous. And I'm sure all of you have been there since you're from Tennessee, around Nashville in particular. But if you haven't, I encourage you to go. It was very nice. One of the better presidential. It's got to be one of the. run by a C3. It's not run by a public organization. So they've done an excellent job. But you know, one of the quotes that I saw there from Andrew Jackson, there were a couple, but I guess he is credited with having said that one person with desperate courage makes a majority. And then he's also credited with saying that he was born for the storm and was not a man for the calm. And I think those two quotes really, you know, he was the first populist, I guess. They call him the first populist, but I think that those two quotes at least would have put him in good company in this room. So I thought those were fitting quotes to share. I think it's auspicious that we're gathered here on July 2nd, right ahead of the July 4th holiday, because it was actually on July 2nd that the Continental Congress declared our independence officially from Great Britain when they passed the unanimous resolution saying that we would be independent. And I think, you know, the founding ethos of Americans coming together, convening around founding principles of liberty, the rule of law, that what we're doing here in this country is not, you know, electing us, you know, whoever happens to be the most popular among us, but what we are doing is vindicating a certain set of ideas that have made us the envy of the world, that have made us the most successful nation in the world. And, you know, I think at Principles First, we really think that that secret sauce of what makes America so great, that has made us the greatest economy, the strongest military, people are questioning that secret sauce in a way that they haven't, you know, in previous years, previous elections. That secret sauce is being questioned. And so I think substantively what Principles First is trying to do is trying to put that secret sauce back at the front of our public discussions. And what we're doing here this evening, by convening, is a critical component to that, of doing that. I mean, you know, Steve raised a couple of discrete action items that we can do. And I am not going to stand here and say that I have the blueprint or the roadmap that's going to solve the challenges that we have as a country. All I can say is we've started as a small group of citizens, and we've started to see rooms like this grow. And let me tell you, we're closer than you think to making a real difference in our politics, in our party, and in the country more generally. And look, this is, you know, by being here this evening, we are carrying on a tradition that is 250 years old. I mean, it is the essence of the American tradition. Paul Revere, Sam Adams, they did it in Boston. They convened in bar rooms, and they wrote pamphlets to their fellow citizens. These types of convenings are what catch on. Your fellow citizens see us gathering, and they want to come be a part of it. So I think this is a good model, and we're going to continue to do this around the country as much as we can. We started in Detroit. We've got another one coming up. We'll be at the RNC actually in Milwaukee. We'll convene there. So we're just going to keep doing this, and we encourage you to be a part of it, because we're convening now. We face threats now. The threats aren't changing. Whoever wins this November, we're going to still be Americans, and we're going to still have challenges to face. There's going to be, I personally think, regardless of who wins, there's going to be a huge leadership void in both major political parties, because really they're talking about their handicaps and they're talking about their golf games. You know, they're not talking about you know, inflation. They're not talking about what are we going to do about, you know, jobs for people and the threat of AI. I mean, there's so many. There's, you know, NATO. there's any host of substantive issues that could have been addressed that just aren't by our current leaders. And so I think, you know, it's going to be up to us, the people in this room. If we don't raise those issues and force those principles to the front of the discussion, they're going to stay on the back burner. So thank you for being here. I'll just say, last thing I'll say before we introduce our first distinguished guest, I'll say that this room, the people in this room, are the most important people in American politics today. The most important critical segment of the electorate are the folks who are going to not just vote for walk into that voting booth and hold politicians, even of their own party, accountable to a code that is independent of the politician or the party. Those principles are what hold elected leaders accountable. And so by voting those principles, we can have a tremendous impact. And it may not be that we're electing people today, but what happens is when you do that in sufficient numbers, people in Washington take notice. Every time we fill a room like this, I mean, because quite frankly, I'll be honest, this room, we planned this for a month, but this room, it rivals local party meetups of GOP or Democratic Party dinners. I mean, we are to that size, and we really haven't even tried. So it goes to show that just a little bit of energy and effort can really go a long way. And every time we fill a room like this, people take notice in both parties because they want to know what we're talking about, because they know they can't bank our votes. They know that they need to speak our principles rather than just telling us that, hey, I'm a Republican, hey, I'm a Democrat, so you should just vote for me and I don't have to worry about you. So that I think is sort of just the logic of how we think about what we're doing here at Principles First. We're so thrilled that you're here. We hope you'll get more involved and hopefully help us set up more dinners around the state and obviously come to the summit. So with that, I will welcome now to the stage someone, I think this is maybe her first Principles First event, but she is like, we're so thrilled to have her here. People, when we said she was coming, people were like wanting to try to buy tickets from Michigan and all over the country to come to this dinner tonight. So we are so thrilled to have Miss Nancy French here to speak about her book and just awesome. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you, guys. This is so much fun. I'm so honored to be here. This is my very first Principles First meeting, so I'm a little intimidated, especially with the other very distinguished guest. Let me correct the record to say that I don't know anything about the Supreme Court, so please don't ask me. But I would like to establish my credentials and my bona fides. I'm a 3-time college dropout. Not to brag, my husband says that I'm very ambitious and I may drop out of more colleges. But the reason that I'm here is because I have been sort of like the Forrest Gump of politics. Over the past, 15 years, I've been a celebrity ghostwriter. And so as a celebrity ghostwriter, I mostly wrote for GOP politicians. So that means that I've had a very interesting occupational trajectory. So I started writing, first I wrote a book that did not sell very well. Winston Churchill has a famous quote, something like, I'm the writer of rare books, I just never intended them to be rare. And so that no one bought my books, shockingly, to find out what I had to say. And so because I had limited, before I became a ghostwriter, I sold bicycles. And I also waited tables. And so, but at some point, I started ghostwriting for celebrity politicians, and that included, I worked with the Romneys, I worked with Ben Sass on his book called Them, I worked with governors and senators, and also I lived with Sarah Palin in Wasilla, Alaska. Yes, ma'am, I know, I see the shock, I know. But yeah, and I didn't know anything about moose or whatever, but I went to the address that my publisher had sent me, and I was surprised that it wasn't like the Best Western of Wasilla. It was Sarah Palin's house. So it was like driving up on a reality TV show, so it's like so fun. I got to meet the whole family. And that was, back in the day, when I felt super comfortable with my party. And but then in 2016, when everything became so politically acrimonious, I decided that I decided maybe that I wasn't where I needed to be. And in 2016, you guys you may remember this, you may not. It's just my deep-seated trauma, so if you don't remember it, it's fine. But when David French was asked to run for president, do y'all remember this? So, my husband, you remember that? I remember it too, Heath. But my husband, David French, some of you guys may know, he he used to, at the time, he wrote for National Review. And he's coming. He's gonna be here any moment. He's a little late. He's gonna work my merch table. But Bill Crystal floated David's name to run for president, which was slightly awkward because I worked for so many GOP advocates of Donald Trump. The reason they asked David is because he had decided that he could not support Donald Trump, and I decided that as well. So it was slightly awkward because I still worked for Sarah Palin. I still worked for people who I was contractually obligated to fulfill my book contracts with people who were Trump surrogates. So that meant that after David had outed us as never Trumpers, I was at a MAGA rally. That means that after David was speaking so vociferously against Donald Trump, I was on Trump's plane, which is so awkward. The good news is that nobody cares about ghostwriters, so no one knew who I was and nobody cared. But I was in the room when they were trash talking my husband and his, like the fact that he had the temerity to question Donald Trump. I'm almost 50, so like now I probably would have said something, but at the time I was just like, oh my gosh, why did David get me in this position? But I realized in that moment that I should not be there. I should not have been on Donald Trump's campaign plane or the MAGA rally. And I realized it with startling clarity when they asked me to go forward to get a picture with the candidate. And they said, your grandchildren will love this. And I was thinking, I have a grandchild who is from Ethiopia. She is Black. Will she think that this is a charming piece of history, that her grandmother, this is my daughter, Naomi, that her mother was fine with this? And, if you took a picture of me at a MAGA rally, it would look like that, right? So I realized I was not occupationally where I needed to be. I was not geographically where I needed to be. And so, and my clients, whom I love, would just put me in the most awkward positions because they knew that we had affection between each other, but they would get up and just absolutely put on a skillet, never Trump Republican. And I would just be sitting there like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. But after I finished all of my contracts with my clients, I still tried to make things better. So I made a decision. This is going to be shocking, not to lie. Okay? So I decided, occupationally, I'm not going to lie. And that one decision made me basically unemployable by my clients. Because my spiritual gift, which is not listed in 1 Corinthians, but should be, is sarcasm. I like to make liberals drink their tears. Or at least I used to. And then I realized that part of my job as someone who would go to Fox News and sit behind the camera and help my clients own the libs was to mischaracterize Democrats. And I was so good at it, y'all. I was so good at it. But I felt the Holy Spirit tell me that the 10 Commandments were actually a thing. Tell the GOP that. Tell our churches that we shouldn't lie. So I decided not to lie. And I became persona non grata in my own party. And one of the ways that I would lie, and you guys are probably familiar with this term, it was in Ben Sass's book, Them, but he was not the one who originally coined the phrase nutpicking. Are you familiar with nutpicking? So nutpicking is where you've got one guy in Topeka who does something that's dumb and asinine, and I would find out about that guy, and he'd be a Democrat, and I'd say, can you believe this Democrat did this stupid thing that goes against everything that we believe in? That's how Democrats are. Well, you can see the logical fallacy in that. Not only is it illogical, it's also sort of mean. And we would feel that way. As a Christian person, when Democrats would find some person in Appalachia, no shade on Appalachia, my family, we're all hillbillies, but find somebody in Appalachia that does something dumb and say, well, conservatives are like this, they're so dumb, you know? And so that generalization is something that I was so good at. And the Holy Spirit sort of convicted me. So when I decided not to lie, I lost all my jobs. I may have been fired. I may have quit. Who's to say? But I tried for a long time to fight the good fight and to help my clients do the right thing. So, for example, when y'all all remember when Donald Trump criticized John McCain, saying that he appreciates heroes that aren't captured. That to me was the most despicable thing that I'd ever seen, you know, and I've been in politics for a long time. As a person who supports the military, my husband David served in the Army, my dad is a Marine, and I didn't think that I could in good conscience support this person, and I thought everybody would feel the same way. I may have been looking at Twitter during church on a Sunday morning when I saw that, and I read it out loud to my friends, and to my shock, everyone laughed instead of being righteous and like indignant or upset. And so that's when I realized, wait a minute, I'm the Republican whisperer. I know what my clients want before they ask me. So for example, if they would say, this publication wants an essay on immigration, they wouldn't say, this is what I need you to write. I would write what I think they should say about immigration. And I would help shape them like that. So I knew what they should say before we even had a conversation. I was so close to my clients. I love my clients. I still do. But when that happened, my clients would text me and they said, oh, this is great. We really need to write about this McCain thing. And I was like, yeah, you're totally right. We should denounce this anti-military thing. We should talk about the fact that Donald Trump didn't serve and that he considered not getting an STD his own personal Vietnam. We should talk about that, right? And my clients were like, no, that's not the tape. No, what? That's not the tape we were going to take. We were going to congratulate him for sticking it to the man. And I would say, well, you know, we're pro-military, so maybe we shouldn't do that. I don't know. Maybe, remember 5 minutes ago when we loved the military? And so, but my clients, on that case, I think I won in that one, but it happened over and over and over and over. And I think I finally lost all credibility when I decided, Roy Moore, I don't know if you guys remember this guy. Remember this guy? I was not a fan of Roy Moore, and this was before we found out he was so perverted and nasty and gross. This was before the sex scandals. This was when he was basically forcing a tattoo of the Ten Commandments on every American's head or whatever. So I was like, you know, as conservatives, we don't believe that we should do. Absolutely not. You know, we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in pluralism. No, Judge Moore, I'm not. So I told my clients, I will not write you an endorsement of Judge Moore. I'm sorry, this is a bridge too far. And anyway, I got fired from a lot of jobs, shockingly. Because the job of a ghostwriter is not to tell the clients what they think, is to religiously and faithfully convey what they think. But I didn't think that God gave me my writing skills to lie. So I stopped writing for politicians and I went to the wonderful, pure world of Hollywood. And I wrote for Kim Kardashian and I wrote for Sean Lowe, The Bachelor. And I just had some fun doing that for a while. Finally, I wrote my own book. It's called Ghosted. It's back there. And it's not the story of being a ghostwriter. It's not a tell-all, because I love my clients. I think they're fantastic. It's a story of being ghosted by groups of people that you thought would support you. Because when I came out against Donald Trump in rural Tennessee, we became about as popular as headlights. And so that's the premise of the book and presumably why I'm here. I'm a storyteller, I'm an investigative journalist, and I'm an unemployed ghostwriter. So don't ask me about the Supreme Court, but that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to interject, and we should open it up for questions. If people have questions, be thinking about them. I'm going to have a few back and forth with Nancy now, and then we'll open it up. But Nancy, I did want to tee up, I think when we were discussing about just the event and remarks, you had suggested that there were a couple of good stories from this period in your life that were indicative of kind of how you make allies, how you negotiate these differences that had developed between people. Did you want to share some of those? I think that
lucrative that is, I do have a moth story that's related to just a funny marriage thing that happened. But there might be something for this audience. I thought maybe you might would hear about the time I lied to Mitt Romney. Yeah, this one might be slightly more interesting to this crowd. This does not reflect well on me, so I will just warn you in advance. But so my husband David, who's here, he and I started this organization called Evangelicals for Mitt back in the day, because we were evangelical Christians and we wanted people to support the Mormon, which was a hard sell, if you remember. People were very antagonistic toward that idea, especially when you had great, other great Republicans running, including here in Tennessee, Fred Thompson. Who here was a Fredneck? Oh, I see some Frednecks. Okay, these were my problems, those three guys. So I started an organization called Evangelicals for Mitt to deal with the religion issue, and we talked about it ad infinitum. Governor Romney, or Senator Romney, at the time, Mitt Romney, he lost. But at the time, we had worked every day for a long time on this enterprise. And then my husband decided to join the Army, which came as a shock to me, because it was sort of, in my opinion, it was a little bit out of the blue. But knowing David, as some of you guys do, it's probably not shocking at all. But he loves America. He decided to join the Army, even though we had 2 kids, and so he goes to Iraq, where he's deployed. And I'm still trying to keep up this blog, Evangelicals for Mitt, and every time David and I could talk, we would text about politics. But one day, one of the Mitt Romney staffers was like, "Are you going to CPAC?" And I was like, "I would love to go to CPAC, but I can't because I made this promise never to leave my kids, because I wanted to tuck them in at night. They need one parent to tuck them in at night for this entire year. I'm never going to leave my kids." And so they were like, "Well, it's sort of an important speech." And I was like, "I love my children. Why would you dare ask me to go to CPAC?" So anyway, I missed Mitt Romney's speech where he quit the race. And I was so sad because I worked on it. Before Mitt decided to run, I'd worked on this. So I was so despondent. So when the staffers convened in Utah to do a post-mortem, I forgot that I loved my kids. And I went to Utah. I dropped them off at my parents. I went to Utah. I sat around at tables and we talked about how terrible America was to not support, Mitt Romney, what we did wrong, and all this stuff. Not really. It was just everybody was sad and depressed, and I was like, why did I do this? So right as I was about to leave, I get a text from Ann Romney, and she goes, "I'm coming to Utah. Are you there?" And I was like, "I am here. Yes, I'm here." And she said, "Do you ski?" Okay, so we're in a southern place. You know that when someone asks you if you ski, that means, have you ever been skiing? And I had been skiing. I went to Paoli Peaks, Indiana in 7th grade with the Baptist. Yes. Is it the same Fredneck? Yes, you're familiar. Okay. So Paoli Peaks has like 300-foot hill. So yes, I'd skied. I was really good at skiing, Ann Romney. Thanks for asking. So she goes, "Great. Mitt and I are flying in. I'll tell you where the key is. If you don't mind just buying some groceries, we'll be in tonight." And I was like, "Great. This is wonderful." Okay, mind you, I have no clothes. I don't know how to ski. But I didn't want to miss out on anything because I love the Romney so much and I felt like I'd given up too much, like I missed too much. So I go and I get groceries and Mitt and Ann fly in. And for some reason, I didn't, this was after he dropped out of the race, obviously, so there was no one else. It was just them and me, Ann's brother and her sister-in-law. And we were just sitting there and talking, and I thought, oh, this is going to be harder to hide the fact that I can't ski because there's not AIDS, right? And so Mitt Romney leans over and he goes, "Nancy, do you ski?" So God was giving me another opportunity to come clean. And I said, "Yes, I am as good as Jean-Claude Killy, who was the only skier I knew." Now, in this audience, you knew I was joking because we don't hang out with Jean-Claude, right? But Mitt Romney says, "Oh, I know Jean-Claude. I worked with him in the Winter Olympics in 2002. He's great." So I thought, okay, this is really bad. But I go to sleep thinking that somehow God is going to protect me from myself. This was before I made my no lying rule, as you can tell. So the next morning I get up and Mitt Romney wakes me up and he goes, "Do you have any ski gear?" And I said, "Absolutely not." Because I was just, coming for one night. He goes, "No worries. I ran the Winter Olympics." So he opens this huge closet. It was like as big as those 4 doors. And every single thing in them had Olympic, the circles, the logo. And it was the hats, socks, pants, ski jackets, everything. So I walked out of there, and by the way, every woman in this room will understand the horror of having Mitt Romney look at my body and guess my size. But he got it down exactly, which was horrifying. I thought maybe he would guess below a little bit, but he did not. So anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, God somehow is going to protect me from this anyway. So I go to the ski slopes, and I don't know that you're not supposed to buckle the boots before you get, y'all know this probably, but anyway, so Mitt Romney is gliding through up the mountain like a gazelle, and I'm like a drunk duck or something. I can't walk, and he's famous, right? He just dropped out of the race, and everybody's like, "Hey, Mitt, hope those slopes aren't as hard on you as Iowa," And I'm like, okay, this is fine. I'm gonna be fine. Somehow, in a miracle, I wind up being able to get off the thing, where they take you up and you have to fall out, the chairlift. Yes, thank you, ski lift. And so I get off and they're like, okay, now it's time. So it was the moment of truth, and I could either come clean and tell the Romneys that I was lying about it because I resented the fact that I was missing out on too much, or I could just go with it. So I decided to go with it, of course. So Mitt skis down the mountain, and then it was my turn. And I looked, and I literally thought that I was gonna die, but it was preferable to telling the truth at that point because I was too invested. And for some reason, I was like, okay, I think I can do this. I'm moderately athletic, right? And I thought that maybe, Bob Costas might narrate this part of my life and say, she didn't know she could ski until she believed in herself. So that's not what happened. So I start going down the hill, the mountain. It's really one of those big ones. It's not like Paley Peak. And I didn't know that you're supposed to do that zigzag thing. So it's like a 9mm bullet. And I pass everybody. I pass Ann Romney. I pass everybody. I'm just so crazy, so stupid. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm really good at this. Look how fast I'm going. I'm so much better than the Romneys. But then I lost my pole, I lost my ski, and I was about to die because there was this cliff, but there was a person between me and the cliff, so I decided the only thing I could do is grab him. And it turned out to be Mitt Romney. If he had not actually dropped out of the race, the Secret Service would have shot me. Because I took that man out. And we were so intertwined, that I couldn't unentwine with him without him pushing me by my butt off of him. It was so embarrassing. And people were taking pictures because I looked like an Olympian that was inebriated or something. So I could just imagine people saying, "Oh, here's Mitt Romney and a drunk Olympian." But okay, so at that point I had to come clean. All truth is revealed, and Anne, who's so cute, with her little red hat, she skied up, and the Romneys all gathered around me, and they were like, "What is actually wrong with you?" And I was like, "I'm so sorry, I lied," and I told them that I just wanted to be with them. I'm so sorry, I thought I could hide this, but it was a lot of miscalculations. And Anne said, "It is quite possible that you are in more physical danger right now than David, who was in a war zone." And so they said, maybe we should just pray. And so on the side of the mountain, they prayed. And I was like, okay, y'all are going to have to lead because I don't know how Mormons pray. But they prayed for me, and they were so sweet. And the rest of the day, Governor Romney taught me how to ski. And it was so wonderful. And I, as someone who had been talking to evangelicals about the Mormon issue for so long, I had talked ad infinitum to evangelicals about the concept of grace and how Mormons are not Orthodox Christians and how they don't understand grace. And we said that, we always said that. We weren't trying to conflate anybody's faith. We never said that Mormonism was Orthodox Christianity, but we did say that they knew something about grace. And from that point forward, every time that anybody told me that the Romneys didn't understand grace, I would tell them that story.
I can't believe you tackled it wrong.
Right, I tackled it wrongly, and I lied to him, and he like guessed every size of me, which is horrifying.
When you were speaking earlier about ghosts in your book, it's a narrative of how groups that you were a part of, who you agreed with, philosophically, principally, began to isolate you and shun you as a result of speaking up on your principles, or not wanting to tell a lie. And your response has been to write your own books and to write your own stories and tell your own truth and be honest about all of these things that have happened. And I'm sure that has in many ways isolated you even more so. I mean, it's not just your story, it's the story of a lot of people who have taken that same tack. I'm curious, since that point, have you had any moments of re-entry into those groups? What has been effective in reaching back out or have you remained ghosted? I mean, I'm trying to search for like the silver lining, of how can we be re-embracing some of those communities that have isolated us and reconciliating with them to without giving up the principles that we're standing on.
That's a good question. I don't have an easy answer for this. I spent all day with my family members, and we have political disagreements, and how awkward it is and how uncomfortable it is. But so I don't really have a great one of the things that I think is super important is that politics is so downstream for most people's lives. Not you guys. You guys are all about it, I can tell. That's why you're here, and it's important to be involved in politics. But when people ask me, for example, like, how do you traverse that bridge? It's always with things that aren't political, like talking to them about things, like I love my dad so much. We don't have to talk about the recent debate, right? We can talk about other things. And one of the things that I have found is that so many people are lonely, and some of the political acrimony stems from just being super lonely. And so I have not excelled at reaching across to my neighbors. And I mean, I have my whole family supports Trump. I mean, you guys, some of you know my family. I've talked to you already, and you know how Republican everybody in my family is. They're wonderful people. I love them so much. But one of the things that I have done is to reach out to people regardless of their political persuasion, and that has been great because my whole life I grew up. I'm sure, like many of you, grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh. He had a TV show. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I would record his TV show on VHS. And when I came home from high school, I would listen to that. And so I always just had incredible antipathy toward Democrats. When in 2016, I wrote a Washington Post article where I detailed my own sexual abuse, and I sort of was asking the Republican Party, hey guys, do we really want to elect this person who we now know has been held liable in court for abuse? But at the time we didn't. But hello friends, the signs were there. And so I wrote an article in 2016 in the Washington Post, and the conservative response to that was so negative that I decided that I did not care for the rest of my life if conservatives liked me or not, and that I was just gonna have friends regardless of who they voted for. So at the time, this lady named Kathy Kattenberg sent me a nice message. I followed her on Twitter, and Kathy hated everything we stood for. Everything. Like, I don't know why she sent me this nice note. She was just being kind. But she hated my husband so much. Every time that he wrote an article about abortion, she would say, I've had 4 abortions. How dare you tell me what to do with my body? He would write about anti-Semitism. Kathy's a Jew. And she'd say, why don't you let Jewish people talk about that? Not you. Racism. And it was like the whole thing. She hated David So I didn't know what to do because I sort of liked her. And so I decided not to unfriend Kathy, but during COVID, she tweeted this thing out that she was food insecure. And I didn't even know she was a real person, right? And so I was like, okay, I feel like I need to reach out to this person who hates us to find out if she needs help. So I messaged her and she was like, yes, I do need help. What's your phone number? I'll call you. And I was like, you're gonna call me? Is this 1993? Like, who calls? But she called me and I found out she was a real person. She had a voice. She had this New York accent. I sound like I fell off a turnip truck, as you can hear. And we laughed about that. She was food insecure. I found out that this person who was the nemesis of our family for years was a disabled hermit who lived in New York and couldn't get any food. For 2 weeks, she'd been eating pancake mix. And so I was like, okay, Kathy, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna call every synagogue and every Presbyterian church in America, and I know these good people are gonna help. Well, the whole city was inundated with food requests. Nobody could help. So I talked to Kathy every day for 5 days, and she got hungrier and more foul-tempered, believe it or not. But I said, Kathy, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I guess we could just pray about it. And she said, okay, go ahead. And I was like, Kathy, what? I don't pray with people. What do you mean? Like, it was sort of like a fake thing that I said. Because I don't pray with random strangers who hate our family over the phone. And I said, also, aren't you a Jew? Like, if I pray, I could offend you, right? Because I want to say things that honor you. I'm trying to honor you. And she was like, Nancy, good grief, just pray. I'm hungry. So on the phone with Kathy Kattenberg, who hated us, I prayed for food. And that afternoon, all the orders that I placed 3, hoping 1 would come through. They all came through. So she got 25 bananas, 6 pounds of beef, all these chimichangas, which she loved. But there was something so sweet about getting to know Kathy, because every day for 5 days we chatted, and we grew to love each other. And I asked her about her abortion. She asked me about our political beliefs. I haven't changed her 1 iota. She's stubborn. But I love Kathy Kattenberg. So this is many years later, 4 years later, we still talk on the phone. And what I learned from that is that she was lonely. She was sad, and she was trying to get attention by attacking David. And guess what? She got it. And when I did perform at Lincoln Center, when I told stories for the mom, I called Kathy, and I was like, Kathy, can you come? Because it's right near you. And she was like, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I'm disabled. Do you remember that part of the story? And I was like, I know, but does your butt work? Like, can you just sit on it for like an hour? If I could get you there somehow? And she was like, well, maybe. So we arranged for Kathy to be picked up by a driver, and I said, but here's the kicker. I'm gonna be backstage, so the people who have to receive you, David French you have to sit with him. And she was like, oh, okay, that's fine. So David and my son Austin and all my family, they waited outside excitedly for Kathy Kattenberg to show up. It was the first time she'd been to New York City, outside her house in a long time. And to this day, we're dear friends, love her so much. And what I found, this probably would work across the board. So not just reaching out to super liberal Democrats who've had 4 abortions, but also to your families, to my dad. Today when we were talking about the debate, I realized that's not what we should talk about. And so my suggestion is to love people, to see people are made in God's image. Yes, Democrats. Yes, Trump voters. Yes, people like me who are super confused. And I just feel like that's the way. I know that there's a lot of people in here who are super smart, who have recommendations for policies in the future or possible political strategies. I am not that person. I'm just the person who's saying, hey, maybe we can get along. Maybe we don't have to hate each other. Maybe we can love each other.
And I will turn it over to open it up for questions to the floor. So if you just want to raise your hand, I'll run the mic to you if you have a question for Nancy. And then while we're waiting to think of your question, her book Ghost is back there also with Aftercard. I didn't realize that you co-authored that with Curtis.
Yes, I did, and that's based on David French's ideas, Russell Moore's ideas. He's the editor of CT, Christianity Today, and Curtis Chang, who's a public theologian who's progressive from California. Those 3 gentlemen have this thing called the After Party, and I just ghost wrote it with Curtis. So it's based on their teachings.
Anybody have a question? There you go. I'll come
Nancy, my name is David Plazas. Thank you so much for being here. Wanted to ask you a little bit about people who are not just doom scrolling. The Kathy story was beautiful. And it's one that I think gives me a lot of hope. I do a lot of work in civil discourse and travel the state, and wanted to ask you a little bit about, for those people who think the world is going to end after November 5th, what are some of the things that you would advise them to do in terms of the non-political things to get their mind in the right place so they can be with each other and perhaps support each other as a community?
That's a good question. I'm super melancholy. I've been in a bad mood for several years. Maybe like some of you guys, you know? So like, I don't have this like really positive thing to say here other than, and I'm so thankful that you guys exist and that you're thinking, you know, through some of these big issues. It feels like my message of just loving each other in spite of political differences, it seems sort of simple and naive, but I've seen it work, like actually, like time and time and time again. I doom scroll, I have to tell you. I'm sure like all of you, it's so difficult to manage your life and to decide how much social media you take in and how much you don't take in, that I'm trying to do less of that, and I'm trying to do things, I'm trying to create things, I'm trying to reach out, I'm trying to visit in person with my family, and I'm trying to put my phone away. Y'all, my family is here to keep me honest. I'm trying to put my phone away more and to be more present in conversations. But the one thing, as a celebrity ghostwriter, I have a superpower, y'all, and it is curiosity. I am professionally inappropriate in conversations because I will ask anything. And you just get in conversations with people, and people have the most interesting lives. I've talked to some of you tonight and just heard some amazing stories. And I love talking to people and asking them their stories. And I'll tell you this very quickly. I went to Montego Mountain. I told you my family were hillbillies. Went to Montego Mountain in an electric car. I could not let my family know I drive an electric car, my extended family on the mountain, because they would have laughed me off the mountain. So it was very unfortunate when my car ran out of charge on Montego. There were 4 charging stations, supposedly, on Montego. None of them worked. So I'm stuck at Montego, and I'm having this terrible realization that either I tell my hillbilly family that I've made this terrible miscalculation, or I'm gonna pay $1,000 to get towed. So of course, I chose the tow truck. So I'm up there at a family funeral, I'm at a cemetery, and this is a place where the #1 chop shop in America, this is where they dismantle your car. My car is sitting there. I cannot protect my car from getting whatever. And I know Montego, because my family, they're some of the people who are the bad guys on Montego, right? And so the tow truck, I'm waiting for the tow truck, and this guy pulls up in a car, and I'm by myself, because I was so prideful that I wouldn't tell my family that I had this electric car. And this guy drives up and he goes, "Hi, I'm Tater. You can call me Dr. Tater." And he goes, "Who died?" And I was like, "My Aunt Myrtle died." And he goes, "Well, you must be Betty and Bob's daughter. I know Myrtle, I know Buddy, I know Susie May." Anyway, Dr. Tater stayed forever. And when the tow truck guy came, he was like, clean cut, and he was like, "I'm able to tow you. Are you okay?" And I was like, "Sure, I'm okay." And I did this quick calculation. I had to judge if Dr. Tater was better company than the tow truck guy. And the tow truck guy offered to take me home, so I said, "Sure, I'll get in this car with you, tow truck guy. I think this is maybe the better path." So I get in the car with tow truck guy, and he immediately starts making racial slurs. Okay? So I have a 2-hour car ride with tow truck guy who's using racial slurs. And I'm thinking, is this what we do now in America? We just overlook this, or should I say something? And I mentioned that I had the daughter, Naomi, and I thought, you know, I can't as a mother just let this go. So I say, "Sir, if I had been African American, would you have used that phrase?" And he said, "Yes, because I hate everybody equally." And he turns to me like this, and I notice he's got a 9mm, like Glock 43 on his body. And I was like, "Oh great, I just confronted this armed man about his racism. This is fun, and I can't get out." So he was previously, you know, like I had done an assessment of him. He was a volunteer firefighter. He was helping me out of a fix, and I thought he was great. So I said, so when he said, I hate everyone equally, for some reason I thought that was funny and stupid, and I laughed. And I said, you don't hate anybody. You're so full of it. You're a volunteer firefighter. I don't love my community that much. So what's your real reason? Who do you hate and why are you saying this? And I said, and I get it, you know, because Montego Mountain is full of KKK, and I'm not judging you. I just want to understand where you're coming from. And he said, oh, the KKK is not, that's not, he goes, I am a neo-Nazi. I'm not just a KKK member. So then I realized I was in a car for 2 hours with an armed Nazi that I just confronted over his racism. And I said, okay, and so David's texting me the whole time, because he's like, I don't know if you should have gotten in the car with it. And so he was like, are you okay? And I was like, everything's fine, because what am I gonna say? So I decided at that moment to become a celebrity ghostwriter. So I decided to be curious about this guy. So I asked him everything about, and I found out that he had been a part of this group, this club, several years ago, but he had escaped it, and that he was caring for his wife, and that his wife was disabled. And I asked him 1 billion questions. Okay, so when y'all get together, is it a potluck? Like, what do you make? You know, like, I asked him everything. And I realized that he was trying to get away from bad decisions, you know, and he had not fully gotten away from all of his bad decisions. And I asked him, I was like, I have to be honest with you, when you use these racial slurs, it upsets me, because my daughter, people use those against my daughter, and it hurts my feelings. And I would think maybe you could use different language and see her as a human. Anyway, we talked for 2 hours. So we pull up to our house, and David's outside, oblivious, not knowing anything that had happened. And he's like, hey, thanks for helping my wife get home. And he gets out of the car, and he shakes David's hand, and he goes, you married quite a woman. He goes, we had a very interesting conversation, and I think she's changed my mind on some things. It was so touching. Like, we had an actual conversation, because I was forced to, because I had 2 hours to waste, right? In normal society, if somebody said, hey, I'm a neo-Nazi, I don't mess around with KKK, that's not intense enough for me, you would say, oh, it's so nice to meet you, I'm gonna leave now, right? But I was forced to have this conversation, and I think it was a sacred conversation. And I think if we can have conversations like that with people who are trying to escape these terrible decisions, we can have conversations with our dads and our sisters, and at Thanksgiving with people who disagree with us politically. We can care for these people because they're all made in the image of God.
Any other questions, Nancy? Okay, great. Oh, you got one back there.
I'm Hagen Rose. I live in Brentwood, but we're the same people. I'm up from Eastern Kentucky originally. So not a little different view. I appreciate the view and the ability to talk, to connect with those people. In the short term, there's a potential crisis in the nearby. What's one thing that we can do now, between now and November, to affect a change, or where would you spend your energy, I suppose?
So currently I spend my energy hiding under the bed, basically. So I might not be the best person to ask, because I'm so sad about everything, the debate, the SCOTUS thing. I'm not the right person to ask, but I feel like if you could double down on your relationships and have actual relationships with these people, like, because people will say, well, I work with somebody who believes X. Can you please provide a way for me to dismantle their arguments? And I'm like, don't talk to them about that. Talk to them about their kids. Talk to them about whatever. I do believe it is important to talk about politics. I do talk about it, probably as much as everybody else here. But I believe that you can only talk to people really about politics if you've earned the right to speak to them relationally. I know many of you speak to people all the time, people that you don't know. Like my husband David writes in the New York Times to people he doesn't know all the time. That is not what I'm called to do. I feel like I'm called to relationship, between now and November, I don't know what to do. I should probably stop hiding beneath the bed and, talk more about the things that I care about, my values. And I do that, but I do that and then I sort of brace for all the criticism that comes. I'm just like you guys. I'm intimidated by the criticism. I'm intimidated by the acrimony, but I know that love is more powerful than that.
French, thank you very much. Oh, yeah, one more. We'll do one more.
Sorry, very quick. I'm just kind of curious about this. When David was considering running for president in that traumatic time you mentioned earlier, would you have advised a campaign slogan for him? Did you contemplate that about what you would advise him to motto his campaign?
I did not have that because I thought the French Revolution probably wouldn't work. But we did not get that far, thank God. And nobody ever do that again. So if y'all know Bill Crystal, tell him absolutely not.
Everyone, please give a round of applause. Right, we will keep moving along here. Pull out my notes. It is a great pleasure and honor to welcome back with us this evening a guest who, this is his second Principal's First event. We were honored to have him at the summit. We had him discuss sort of the legal issues of the day, rule of law, constitutional issues. He's someone that I greatly respect and admire as an attorney and a lawyer, but also just as a public servant. Alberto Gonzales, he's an American lawyer who served as the 80th United States Attorney General from 2005 to 2007. Yeah, I'll let him make his way up here while I'm introducing him. He is the highest ranking Hispanic American in executive government to date. He previously served, and this is, I'm partial to him for this, he previously served as Secretary of the State of Texas, as a Texas Supreme Court Justice, and as White House counsel, becoming the first Hispanic to hold that office. And I was refreshing myself on your bio earlier today. I didn't realize that you actually had taught a class at Texas Tech. I was actually born out in Lubbock, but so we're both from Texas in that way. But please join me in welcoming Mr. Alberto Gonzales.
I don't have quite the opening act that previous speaker has, but I'm delighted to be here. It's a very, I think it's a very important time in the history of our country. I don't know how many of you watched the debate. Like many Americans, I was shocked and disappointed. Disappointed that time has been so hard on someone that I know, Joe Biden. He's a good man. We don't always agree on policy, but I've always admired his service to our country, and to see him during the debate was very, very sad. And it also has raised a lot of questions about what's going to happen in the November election. My wife and I have discussions about this all the time in terms of who is she going to vote for, who am I going to vote for, and it's just tough. Given my service, my relationship with George W. Bush, the kind of person that he was and is, there is absolutely zero chance I would ever support Donald Trump. And so that leaves, of course, Joe Biden. A lot of policies I don't agree with, but I do believe in his integrity, and his experience is obviously very strong. But I have serious doubts that he can perform as president of the United States. And I think Democrats have a very serious decision to make about their nominee, because, obviously, we want to give the president the benefit of the doubt, but it can only get worse as time passes. I know that the demands of that job are so hard, and you're surrounded by the best and the brightest. You never have to worry about where you're going to sleep or how you're going to travel, but nonetheless, the job. There's a reason why people look the way they do when they're first elected, and when they look like after 4 years and 8 years, it's because it's the hardest decisions you can possibly imagine you have to make as President of the United States. It's incredibly hard. And I worry. I do have, I'm very optimistic by nature. I love America. We are the greatest country on the face of the earth. Name a country that's given more of their sons and daughters to defend freedom, not just on our homeland, but around the world. So we have so much to be thankful for. And when I hear people complain about the fact that we're becoming a third world country, my immediate reaction is go live over there for a year. You come back and you tell me whether or not you feel the same way. We've got serious issues in this country, but by far, with all due respect to anyone who was born outside this country, I believe America still remains the greatest country on the face of the earth because we have great institutions, we have had great leadership, and we've had great participation by average Americans. And so this gathering is very important. He said at the outset, to be engaged, to talk about what's really important in this country, and to hold up this country still is a beacon of great opportunity and hope. So that's my opening act. Okay.
Well, thank you. So there's obviously a lot to, you touched on some of the current issues, there's a lot to unpack. I want to start, obviously, with your time as Attorney General, top law enforcer in the country, and I think, you know, the proper scope of that role and the independence of the Justice Department has been a source of major public debate, and not just this election, but in recent elections, several years. As AG, how did you approach that role going into it? How did you think about the independence between you and President Bush? You know, what were your favorite aspects of the job? What surprised you? I'm just curious how you thought about it.
Well, my views about the role of the Attorney General really were formed during the first term when I was White House counsel, because my primary interface was with John Ashcroft. President Bush was very, very keen to make sure that the Department of Justice would not become politicized. And so the only time I ever talked to John Ashcroft was really related to policy. Development of policy. Now, we had some very controversial issues. Guantanamo, Geneva Convention, surveillance, enhanced interrogations. I mean, after 9/11, we had some extremely difficult decisions to make. President Bush believed it vitally important that the White House not be involved in particular cases. That was a decision to be left entirely to the Department of Justice. And I really admire Merrick Garland for the fact that he's come out publicly, strongly in support of the department. That is the role of the Attorney General. One senior U.S. attorney once described it to me this way. He said, you know, the Department of Justice is a castle. The Attorney General is the moat around the castle. Your job is to defend that institution at all costs. And so I really have admired Merrick Garland's attempt to try to shield the department. Less than 1% of the 115,000 people that work at the Department of Justice are political appointees. Less than 1%. Everyone else, they're career employees. They go in to work day in and day out. They don't care what the president does, well, they may care, but they don't lose their job when the White House changes hands. And so it really, the notion that you can easily politicize the Department of Justice and politicize prosecutions and cases is just ridiculous. It really is. And so I feel for Merrick Garland. He's got a very tough job. I'm often asked of the things I've ever done, which you enjoy the most. You know, being the Attorney General of the United States, a cabinet secretary, driven around in black Suburbans with FBI agents toting machine guns. It's kind of cool. It really is. My son really enjoyed that experience. But the job is incredibly hard because every decision you make, there are always winners and losers. You always have to go up to the Hill and justify decisions by the Department of Justice. You have to give a lot of media interviews, and it's an incredibly difficult job. If you're an American citizen and you get to work in the White House every day, it just doesn't get any better than that. So for me, that was the most enjoyable experience of my professional life. And I think it was made more so for two reasons. One, because I served in the White House during 9/11. So as a lawyer, to be involved during that kind of experience, advising the President of the United States on legal issues, I mean, come on. That's why you go to law school, right? Is to be involved in those kind of decisions. And then the other reason that for me was the most enjoyable is because of George W. Bush. I knew him from our days in Texas. I was his general counsel in Texas. We knew each other well. I knew the kind of person he was. I knew the kind of information he wanted in making a decision. I knew how to react to a bad decision or a bad outcome in a decision. So being able to be in the position of White House counsel for someone that I considered a friend and someone that I admired made the job even more enjoyable. So for those of you who have the opportunity to go work in the White House or certainly visit the White House, I mean, it's just incredibly cool. It really is.
You spoke a bit about, so much of the Department of Justice is comprised of not political staff, but career staff. There seems to be so much growing public distrust of the Justice Department, of the way that we decide to bring cases against citizens now, obviously because of the profile cases with Trump. But in general, that distrust seems to have grown in recent years, and particularly in the Republican Party. Honestly, a party that is dedicated to the rule of law, it identifies with the rule of law, but there's this deep state mantra. There's this growing sort of paranoia with respect to how these cases are brought. There's some concern that it is politicized, that there's some career staff in the Department of Justice is sitting there looking for people they disagree with to go prosecute. Is that concern overblown? How does that process work when you make a prosecutorial decision? And how is it the role of the Justice Department to communicate that to the American public, to fix that distrust problem, or how do we fix that problem?
I think it's important for the Attorney General to be out there publicly talking about the dangers of that kind of criticism. People lose confidence in the rule of law, then for me, the rule of law is what supports liberty in this country. If you lose confidence in that, then you lose who we are as a country. So I spoke earlier about my admiration for Merrick Garland to try to defend it. The decisions about prosecuting cases are generally made, at various levels. You begin with every U.S. attorney. We have a U.S. attorney here. There are 94 U.S. attorneys, the one here in Middle Tennessee. That person will have a set of law enforcement priorities because the people in this district have concerns about certain kinds of crimes, and so that becomes a priority for that U.S. attorney in making charging decisions. But above that, the head of the criminal division at Main Justice has law enforcement priorities as well. Some of those get pushed down. The Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, they also have priorities. And then on top of that, the President of the United States campaigned to the American people on certain law enforcement priorities. And so there are, cascading set of priorities. And what happens is that the decision maker, beginning with the U.S. Attorney here in this district, all the way up to the Attorney General, is involved in evaluating the evidence, and making a decision as to whether or not we prosecute a case. I very rarely had the final word on whether or not, okay, we're going to go forward and prosecute this case. The final decision would be often made by the U.S. Attorney here locally, or made by the head of the criminal division, or made by the Deputy Attorney General. If it involved presidential power, the president, or a member of the president's family, then of course there would be a discussion with me to let me know we're going to go forward in this prosecution, and these are the reasons why. And I would not second guess that. So long as I was comfortable that the appropriate people that had looked at the case, had evaluated the case, and had made a studied decision, then I would support it. Because there are so many cases that occur every day, so many decisions about prosecuting cases, that you just don't have time to get deeply involved in the facts of a particular case. So, most cases, either civil cases or criminal cases, are not decisions that the Attorney General is personally involved with, quite frankly.
And just to kind of fast forward, let's go forward a year from now. To solve this, perceived problem, it has been suggested that a solution perhaps is to fire all the career staff in the Department of Justice. replace them with, people that we know will make certain decisions that, that we command them to make. Should we be worried about the potential for abuse in that way?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No, absolutely. Again, there are only about 1,000, 1,100 people in the Department of Justice are political appointees. The rest are career. And so there are limits to how much you can try to change the department. And the truth of the matter is that career folks, if they don't like the president, if they don't like the attorney general, they can make your life really miserable. And so there's only so much damage that I think President Trump could do if he wanted to put in loyalists into the Department of Justice, quite frankly. Obviously at the top you would have loyalists, but the work is not going to be conducted at the top. It's going to be conducted below. And the career people, if they don't like you, it could really make life very, very, very difficult.
Just to switch gears a little bit, just more broadly, the justice system, the rule of law, as you look across our justice system today, is there any reform or area of the law where you feel a particular reform is needed? Is that something that the Department of Justice can sort of do unilaterally, or do we need Congress to act? I'm just curious if there's something out there that's on your mind.
Right, we talked about this in DC. One of the things that, when I worked for Bush, as his general counsel, I advised Bush on close to 50 state executions. And then as White House counsel, I think seven or eight federal executions. And so, I've been involved in a number of the decisions as to whether or not the governor or the president should grant clemency. And what I observed is that virtually every person on death row was either a minority, a person of color, or someone who was poor. And it made me realize, we have a problem in our country with the death penalty. I support the death penalty for certain kinds of the most heinous crimes, particularly against children. I get that. People that, in my mind, cannot be rehabilitated. But we have a problem with imposing the death penalty if only people of color and people that are poor, because they can't afford good lawyers, are being executed. And that's where the Supreme Court is going to step in. The Supreme Court is going to step in eventually and say, this is not right. This is unconstitutional. So I think the Attorney General has a big megaphone with respect to issues like that. And so yes, I think that would be one area where I think we should look very carefully about making sure that we only putting to death those people who have had full access to counsel, all the issues that possibly could impact the decision to move forward have been resolved, have been examined in a court of law, and as I said, I support it, but I think we have some major issues, and where the Department of Justice could be a leading voice in trying to look for reform.
Great. And now I want to switch to also topical legal issues. Obviously, it's been a quiet week on the constitutional law front. Not much going on. But in all seriousness, the Supreme Court seems to be at the very center of every major public debate these days, for better, but probably for mostly worse. We'll just start with the big one. What did you make of the immunity decision yesterday? I mean, is it concerning, or, the public reception of a decision like that is obviously very different from, the legal interpretation of what the justices are doing. It was a 6-3 decision. Is it consistent with what you might have expected the court to say as a legal matter? And, do you think the court is putting too much trust in presidents to act in accordance with norms and standards of the presidency? What was your reaction to the decision?
I expected the decision in that 5 of the 6 justices have a lot of experience in the executive level of federal government, and so they understand how difficult the decisions are for a president. And a president cannot be deterred from making tough decisions for fear that that president's going to be prosecuted for criminal wrongdoing. So in that sense, the decision made a lot of sense to me. But the language used was jarring, quite frankly, because the reaction from many people around the country was, you mean the president can engage in criminal wrongdoing and be absolutely immune? I thought we were a country that didn't have a king. And what the court is saying is we're immunizing the President of the United States. I don't know this to be true. I mean, I know most of the justices on the court, so I can't speak for the court. I'm not sure they were looking less, I think, at Trump, even though he was the named party, and more at people like Biden and future presidents. Because I think if I'm on the court and I hear President Trump talk about retribution against Biden when Biden's no longer in office, I'm worried about what's going to happen to Joe Biden if Trump gets elected. And maybe the court was thinking the same way, that maybe the president needs to have that kind of protection for decisions made while he's in office. So I thought about that. I do understand it's uncomfortable, the notion the president would have that kind of immunity, but maybe the court was also thinking, you know what, we have an obligation to protect the institution of the presidency. The American people have the opportunity on election day to decide whether or not this is a person that can be entrusted with this much power, that this is a person I'm going to support that has the integrity to handle, to cope with this much power. So again, I'm just thinking about why the court went the way they did. The bottom line, as someone who has been in the room while the president has to make a tough decision, if he elected a president worth his or her salt, that president is going to make the right decision for this country, whether or not they're going to be prosecuted or not. Let me make that clear. But nonetheless, no president should ever have to worry about making a tough decision about being prosecuted by a subsequent president. And I think that played a big part in the decision by the court.
And then I think the other decision that got a lot of play was Loper Bright, the one that got rid of Chevron deference. As conservatives, many of us probably cheered that decision, but it was obviously made waves. I mean, many on the left have said it spells disaster for the regulatory state, clean air, all the comforts of life are going to go away because we've lost Chevron deference. What do you think the practical implications actually are of the decision? Can we throw away our admin law books?
Well, I think this is one case where be careful what you ask for, because what we're saying is administrative agencies have too much power, and that a lot of the decision making should be within the Congress. Congress can't do anything, right? Think of all the major problems. All the expertise is within the agencies, and so now we're going to be asking Congress to assume more responsibility to make these decisions. So I think we're going to find congressional staffs grow much larger. Listen, as a constitutional matter, I do understand the notion that in the Constitution there's no mention of regulatory agencies, administrative agencies. There are three separate branches of government, but yet we have these agencies that legislate through rulemaking, that perform executive functions in administrating the regulations, and then adjudicate as judges. And so you have these 8 entities that have all 3 powers. And the distribution of powers is one of the geniuses of the founding fathers. And so I can understand why conservatives would think, where did this administrative state come from? And so in that sense, I support it. But again, be careful what you wish for, because I don't know what this decision is gonna end up providing. And we may find ourselves very frustrated and yearning for the expertise and the attention of people that work in these agencies. We'll have to wait and see.
And just to finish up on the Supreme Court, I mean, certainly on the left, you're hearing this, given the current composition of the court, but even people on the right will basically tacitly admit that the court is this way, but a lot of people think it's just too political. It's become partisan. You know, the president that appoints a justice basically determines the outcome of those cases, or the way that they decide, or this is how it's perceived in the public. Has the court become too political? Is that a concern of yours? Why not? You know, some have suggested 18-year term limits for justices. Steve Calabrese, the founder of the Federalist Society, actually is someone who believes that we ought to term or sunset justices after a certain amount of time.
I wrote the Sunset Legislators.
Okay, there you go. But does the institution need reform? Is it okay?
I think the institution there's an image, no question, there's an image problem with the court. The court is viewed, whether it's political or not, it is certainly viewed as political, and I think that's very, very dangerous. President Bush put John Roberts and Sam Alito in the court. I know John Roberts is trying very hard to keep the court centered and maintain public support for the court. It hasn't worked, quite frankly, and I think the court has done itself no favors by the way that by certain actions by spouses of the members of the court, and also by some of the ethics, what appears to be ethics lapses by members of the court. Those, it seems to me, would be fairly easy ways to improve the reputation and image of the court. Pass some kind of ethics code or something like that. Something that's got a little teeth in it, and that's easy to do. So I think the court could have done more to try to improve the reputation, and I think that has contributed to the views of some that perhaps this court has become too politicized.
Then we'll open it up for questions, so be thinking of your questions. But I want to tee up sort of a comparative question as we close here. It feels like America is entering sort of a new struggle against autocracies. You hear the word autocracy thrown around somewhat casually, increasingly in a casual way, but I do think whether it's Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, I said this in my opening, I think people are starting to question whether the American formula of the rule of law, freedom, our Constitution, whether that can hold against some of those threats. Whether there's cracks beginning to form in sort of that constitutional foundation. Do you see those cracks? Do you think that there's a real question there? Are those things holding? And what can we do as Americans in this room and other rooms like it to shore up those cracks and make sure that people understand what we need to protect here?
Yeah, I don't know whether or not I would call them cracks, but I feel like I can hear the institutions groaning under the strain, okay? A lot has to do with the way our leaders in this country talk about institutions. One thing I admire about President Biden is that he recognizes the importance of institutions. They help support who we are as a country. There is no guarantee, folks, that America is forever. It's a miracle this country ever was formed, and it takes work. And I worry, why is it we are where we are today? I think social media has really done a number on the way people think about America and about leadership in this country. Because through social media, you can amplify lies so easily. And when we can't even reach agreement on the truth, it's just hard to compromise and reach agreement on some of these very, very difficult issues. So I think having people like yourselves being curious about, okay, what are the issues and what can I do is vitally important. When I first read the principles of this organization at home with my wife Becky, we said, this is us. This is what we believe in. And this is why I'm here, because this is really important. And your involvement and participation is so very, very important. And we are still great. We are still a great country. But it's going to take us to be dedicated and to work at it, right?
Thanks. That's my question.
Hi, everybody. Mr. Attorney General, I just wanted to ask, we rightfully talk about the politicization of the DOJ coming from the President of the United States, but recently, as most of you know, the Congress of the United States held Attorney General Garland in contempt. And for those of you that haven't been around politics long, this is the third administration in a row where an Attorney General has been held in contempt by Congress. What,
I feel left out.
yeah, I know, I was gonna say, you're the last administration not to, so. But, what damage does it pose when you have Congress after Congress, really politicize and, go after the DOJ?
Well, if it happens every administration, pretty soon it really doesn't have much impact, quite frankly. It's people recognize it for what it is, which is a political stunt. I mean, because there's no teeth to it. Okay, so Merrick Garland's in contempt. Who's going to enforce the contempt? Typically, it's the Department of Justice or the Sergeant at Arms, but that's not going to happen. And so it means absolutely nothing. It's a waste of time, both in the Congress and for the Attorney General. And I think that's very unfortunate. You know, growing up as a kid, remember, I used to think being a member of Congress, I don't want to offend any current members or former members of Congress, but the kind of nonsense that happens today in our Congress, to me, is amazing. You know, we send these people up to Washington to help solve our problems, and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff in Washington, and I don't get it. Now, then I tell myself, but wait a minute, you know, I have a responsibility. I can change that. We all can. We get to vote. And so if we're not voting, some of the nonsense that we're seeing in Washington, perhaps, you know, we look in the mirror because we have some responsibility for the people that are up there. We just need to make some changes.
Hi, I wanted to ask again about the Supreme Court. You talked about it a little bit, about gesture towards Alito and an ethics code and Clarence Thomas. What do you think the path is to rebuilding this perception problem or credibility problem, and what did you think, having worked with these people, about what seems like a pattern of decisions that threaten the credibility of the backbone of the country?
I think it's important for the judges to come out and speak to groups like this one. I think that would be very, very helpful. For them to hear your concerns, but also for them to explain, you know, what's it like? What are the pressures that they're feeling? How is it that they arrive at these decisions? I think getting the court out there and not going, spending the summer in some island, you know, some rich person or something, but here in America, spend some time with the American people and talk to them about you know, what it's like to be on the court. What are they worried about? I think that would do a world of good. I think the legal profession also has a role to play in this, in terms of educating the public about the appropriate role of the court, express concerns if they have concerns, if we have concerns about the court, and what we as citizens can do, or what we as citizens should expect from members of our judiciary. So those are a couple of things that I would recommend.
Oh, you got it. That's all.
So, General, this might be a lighthearted question or more serious, but if you could add an amendment to the Constitution, or that right now, or delete one, do you have something that you would?
You know, I teach a class. One of my former students is here. I'm not sure I did it the year that he was in the class, but an extra law class. And in the last class period, I asked them, okay, if you could change the Constitution, what would you change in the Constitution? And typically it is term limits for members of Congress, not for the court, members of Congress, and also making it easier to amend the Constitution. Because we probably have the hardest Constitution to amend in the Western world, quite frankly. And think of the power that gives to the court when we can't amend the Constitution. And so those are the things I think, for me, would probably amending the Constitution. I'm a Uniform Law Commissioner from Tennessee, and I'm co-chairing a committee for the Uniform Law Commission that is looking to see how we can maybe tinker with Article 5 of the Constitution to make it easier. The problem is, right now, particularly Republicans are very happy with the court. They don't want the Constitution changed, and so it can become a political dynamite. So we want to tread very, very carefully about this, but I think this is something that we ought to look at. Not, we don't want to make it too easy, of course, but there's got to be a way that we can make changes in the Constitution without having to rely upon these 9 unelected individuals who hold these positions for life.
Mr. Attorney General, one thing I perceive in the last 20 years with the Republican Party is that the Democrats were always more results oriented and the Republicans were always more inclined to defend principle. But today, it seems like the Republicans want results regardless of what principle has to be sacrificed, like the worst abuses of the Democrats. And I think it leaches over into the judiciary. They don't want judges who are going to come up with a brilliant insight as to what the Constitution says. They want a result that agrees with their agenda. And I think that's one of the reasons we need groups like this, and we need to change the party. We can't go on being a party that abandons principle just to get the result we want, because eventually we won't get the result we want and we want, and we won't have any principles to stand back and save ourselves with.
Couldn't say it better.
Judge, a friend of ours is working very hardly on making the amendment to Constitution to restrict the number of judiciaries to 9, so that, because it's unlimited right now, there's not a number that is in the Constitution for
Limit the number of justices
in the court. Yes. So maybe if you could comment about that, and then a follow-up is maybe not in totally different subject, but one of the things that I'm disappointed in, I've been disappointed in several years, is no one's talking about the federal debt. And we seem to be spending ourselves, we're spending our great-grandkids' money right now. So when you were in the White House with President Bush, maybe there's some caveat or some story you could relate to about the federal debt or something that came up there that, and maybe not, but anyway, I just wondered, that's my second question.
Well, on the debt, that was always a concern for Governor Bush. You have to remember though, shortly after taking office, we had the attacks on 9/11. At that point in time, that was his first priority, to spend as much money as necessary to keep America safe. And so, we thought about, we're gonna worry about the debt later, once we feel that the country is safe. In terms of your first point about the justices, there is an effort to perhaps look at increasing or decreasing the number of justices on the Supreme Court. There's no number required by the Constitution. I happen to like the present number, maybe because that's all I've known all my life. I also believe that if you expand the court, quite frankly, there isn't enough room in the Supreme Court building on the dais to add additional seats, it seems to me. So I don't think that's going to happen, quite frankly, and it just would mean more confirmation wars, I think, if you add more justices. So I don't know that I would really support it. I don't think it would really solve the problem. Look, the people that are complaining about changes to the court are the people that are unhappy with the decisions. I think if democratically appointed justices control this court, there would probably be decisions coming out of this court that Republicans would be screaming about and would want to see changes to the court. So it's really, these things kind of go in cycles, and I do worry about the reputation of the court. I know the chief is very concerned about it, and I understand as I'm a former justice, this notion that, I can't worry about all the politics and what people think about me. My job is simply apply the law. And I think that's true to a degree. I think the reputation of the court as an institution is, everyone on that court has a responsibility to protect the reputation of the court. And they need to be sensitive to that. I'm afraid that they just aren't.
So my understanding is that states with, I think, something like 207 electoral votes have approved moving to popular election, popular vote for president. And the concept was once you get to 270 electoral votes, that becomes a reality. Is it that simple?
I have no idea.
It's an interesting, if you research it, apparently a number of states have approved moving to a popular vote, and up to 200 and something like that, 7 or 10 electoral votes among states have already approved it. So
we'll see. I don't know.
There's a well-known legal principle called the double whammy, right? It seems to me we have a couple of things that are sort of forming a perfect storm. We do have a likely president who seeks to exercise more power than the executive has in the past. There are Project 2025, there's the unitary executive movement, all those things. But we also have a public that expects literally nothing from Congress except performative antics. So it seems like as we expect less of Congress, it just opens the door to the president. So in addition to term limits, as somebody who ran for Congress, do you see any space in the wake of the Citizens United decision to reform campaign finance laws to make it less of a barrier to someone to run and replace an incumbent?
Well, I mean, there's so much to be said about reforming our campaign system. One easy solution would be, okay, the president serves 1 6-year term. Think of the amount of money that we save even on campaigns. Mexico has that kind of system. Now, I wouldn't want us to be like Mexico, but nonetheless, I mean, there are various things that we can do to reform our campaign laws. The truth of the matter is, though, in the end, it really depends on the individuals we put in these positions. Power is intoxicating. It ruins a lot of good people. You do not want to give it up, and you will do anything you can to hang on to it. And I think we, as a country, as a population, as a voting population, we've made a lot of mistakes in putting certain kinds of people into these positions. And so we reap what we sow, I suppose, and just not understanding that it's not simply enough for people to campaign on issues that appeal to you. The integrity and the character of these individuals is very, very important. You know, it really is.
Hello. I have kind of a question about the AI technology that's coming out. I'm not sure if you're familiar with X and Grok and ChatGPT, but what is your opinion on letting ChatGPT and Grok, the AI behind X, to evaluate and read through the bills and kind of highlight some of the controversial aspects that have been currently in review? Or
No idea. I have no idea.
Thank you.
This is my student.
Yes, I'm this student. I had plenty of opportunities to ask you about the Constitution in our class, so I won't do that. But having a career marked by public service and being told throughout the night to get involved, what are some things that maybe we who are interested in getting involved should keep in mind to pursue those principles over there on that banner and to make a difference coming forward?
Okay, first thing, get educated. All right, what's this country really all about? What is the history of our country? So hopefully you learned something in my class and in law school at Belmont. And so that's the first step, is just getting educated. And then look for like-minded individuals. Don't be afraid of spirited debate. It's important to communicate, because it is true that you never know when you're going to encounter someone who's going to teach you something. You you didn't know, or you may persuade them about something they didn't know. You know, and I tried this, if I just digress just a bit, I did an interview for CNN a few weeks ago defending the Department of Justice. You know, I don't agree with the decision made by Merrick Garland, but I also know I don't know what he knows. And so maybe if I had the same information, I would make the same decision. So I'm talking about on this interview about how I support Merrick Garland's doing. Well, I get this tirade, this email from an individual, and normally I ignore emails because I get this from time to time, talking about, you know, how could I go on TV and defend the department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to try to engage with this person and try to understand why this person feels the way they do. And so I send him a nice email explaining, you know, why I believe that I do, and asking him, tell me about yourself. Well, I get back this long tirade about how his family had been in Tennessee for over 200 years. He had been deployed in the military, et cetera, and that, you know, he takes care of his parents watch CNN only, and that if they see somebody lie on TV on CNN, that they believe it to be true, and he goes on and on and on. Well, I didn't respond to that because he was calling me a liar. But I do think it is important, and others have spoken about this evening, it is important to have a discussion and try to have a civil dialogue with people that you disagree with. Now, I think it's a mistake to spend much time with someone who is unwilling to change their mind, but there are a lot of people out there that are open and will spend time listening to what you have to say, and you should spend time listening as well. I think that is vitally important, and we've lost the art of listening, I think, and I think that has made us worse as a people in this country. By the way, thank you for your service to our country.
General Gonzales, thank you. Thank you so much. Please give him a round of applause. And that concludes our dinner program this evening. I just want to say thank you so much again for coming. Thanks to our host, Hillwood Country Club. This was just a fantastic venue and space to have this discussion and dinner. Like I said, invite you all to come to Washington in February when we host our Principals First Summit. It's basically what you saw tonight for 2 days, just some of the great thought leaders and principal, you know, political leaders across the spectrum having this discussion, elevating it in the national discourse as much as we can. We want Americans from every state to come to this thing. I think it does a really good job of elevating this perspective and this, you know, what you heard tonight. Focus on principle, focus on, you know, listening to the people and having these discussions as Americans that are very serious and rooted in the challenges that we face. So thank you all. It's a pleasure to meet you, and you're free to mingle. I think we have the room, Steve, till like 9 or something, but you may want to make an announcement. Oh, okay. Well, I think we've got it till 9. You're free to mingle or take off. Don't forget, Nancy French's book is back there. You can buy one or both of them on Venmo. It's very easy. Thank you all for coming.
Glad you could be here.